in the first Canberra.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And incidentally, he was killed in action.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, for the advantage of our viewers here, although they can't, our listeners, although they can't see it, I'm looking at an absolutely beautiful, beautiful wedding picture of her Peppard and his very beautiful wife. The day they were married, and for those who never seen a picture of her, if you take Paul Gross and George Canyon and you put them together, you've got her Peppard right there. And his wife looks like someone like just someone like Catherine O'Hara and Catherine Zeta-Jones. You put them together, and you've got his beautiful wife. So when were you married then, sir?
We were married in 1946.
46.
A year after.
A year after the war.
Yeah.
Very good.
And when
is she from the Truro area as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we were, we had 2 children, and then she took polio.
Yes, sir.
When she was 27. And she was in the hospital, and there's pictures there of her in the iron lung. Yeah, she was in the iron lung for, I think a month or so. Yeah. And she was in the hospital here in Halifax for about 5 months, I imagine. Yeah.
Must
And
have been a very
she got out.
time.
She was paralyzed from the waist up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So March of Dimes sent her down to New York.
Yes, sir.
To a hospital there. I don't know the name of the hospital, quite famous anyway. And she was taught to use certain things, and tools in the kitchen, whatever they use. She was taught to use them, and so she came home, and she was the wife of the family and the boss of the family.
Very good. And for those who don't remember, I remember very well as a kid growing up, every March, people would canvass at our door looking for dimes.
Oh, yeah.
And it was called the March of Dimes.
Yeah,
now, they would
that's
take $1 from you.
Yeah.
But they had a jar and a can
Yeah.
and a March of Dimes, a little brochure.
Yeah, yeah.
And they would ask for March of Dimes for people with polio and other ailments that they had.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very, very successful charity for many, many
Yeah.
years. And it helped an awful lot of people, including your wife. So I was glad to see she got that help as well.
And so she had 3 miscarriages, and then she had another daughter.
Yes, sir.
And we called her the miracle child.
The miracle child.
And she's one up there this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rosalie. Yeah.
And I met 2 of the daughters just a while back. But so you went to teaching then. What other careers did you have when you were working here?
What?
Other careers did you have?
Careers.
Yeah. Because you said you teach down at the South Shore.
Yeah.
But there was something else that you're quite well known for, and you have to picture this, folks. I'm talking to a man who's 96 years old, but he has the physique of someone who's about 40. He is extremely I wouldn't even arm wrestle him now, for God's sake, at that time. And I've got 3 other folks in the room here with him, and I'll tell you, he could take out the 4 of us right now if he had to. But you were a bodybuilder for many, many years.
Yeah.
And, and what got you into that?
Before the war, I was a weightlifter.
Yes, sir.
See how much weight you can lift and compete with competed in Halifax here and different places. And then after I come back from the war, I got to reading, and this new thing coming in was bodybuilding. And I thought, that's a little healthier than lifting weights, because eventually you'd get hurt,
Right.
So I thought I'd go into bodybuilding, and I did. I went in for years. And the picture there is when I was 68.
Yeah. For those he's talking about, there's a book by Janice Dixon, a Truro author, called Her Peppard, The Internal Man, a biography by Janice Dixon. And in there are some great pictures, and there's a picture of her. Yeah. I recommend you go out to your bookstore and pick up this book, folks, because there's a picture of Herb at 68 years old. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I don't think there's too many people that have a body of that at any age of their group. And this man's 68, and fantastic shape. Now, I remember as a kid growing up, at the back of comic books, there was this thing called Charles Atlas.
Oh, I remember that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And was that your inspiration back then?
Yeah, it was an inspiration, but he never used weights or anything like that.
No, eh?
He did all things, with what he had.
So what did you do specifically for your body? Was it various foods and nutrition?
Oh yeah,
Or various forms of exercise?
I had a scribbler, many scribblers. Everything I ate, calories and everything like that.
Yes?
Yeah. And how much I could eat a day. If I ate more than that, I'd gain weight. And less than that, I'd lose weight.
Now, did you do any running exercises as well? And
No.
things that no.
Huh.
Mostly just for the
Yeah.
body to build it up.
I
Eh?
had enough running in the army.
Now, when you came back from the South Shore, what else did you do for work at that time? For employment?
When I come back from there, I was 64 years old.
Yes, sir?
And my wife wasn't too well then, so we decided we'd better travel.
Right?
And so we went over to visit our son 2 times. Herbie lives in Australia.
Your son lives in Australia?
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
So we went over there twice.
That must have been a great trip, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine what she went through, being sick and, God, she was game for everything.
Right. Now, you took her to Europe as well.
Yeah, we went to Italy.
Now, did you take her to Rome with you?
Oh, yeah.
Now, she must have been fascinated by
Yeah,
that.
she was.
Did you regale her on your stories about when you were there the first time?
Yeah, I think I told her most of the stuff. Yeah, I used to write to her from overseas. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we'll be right back with
Yeah.
the legendary Herb Peppard in a very moment. Thanks for listening. We'll just take a break for a sec, sir. You can
Okay.
have a glass of water.
All right.
The thing I wanted to send you is too long. It won't let me put that much text into it.
Okay, no worries. No worries.
Herb, do you have a favorite food?
Favorite food?
Butter tarts.
Yeah, I like butter tarts and date squares.
Ah,
I thought you might have been partial to fish. Fish seems to be, with the omega-3, seems to be a
Oh,
thing
yeah.
that makes healthy living.
Yeah, when I paid attention to that stuff when I was training. Yeah.
Now, do you look more like your mom or your dad?
Dad.
Your
There's
dad.
my dad behind it. He right that button. Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah. If you look at him, you'll see me.
There you go.
What was the name of that poem you have, Herb, where you're thankful to the Polish workers who thwarted the fuses and the bombs?
Yeah, it wasn't a poem. It was a story,
What was
wasn't it?
I forget the name of that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is just
Where
a
it was
microphone.
stuck in,
He
the
probably
center
has
nose of it was stuck
thousands
in the
more.
front.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's.
Can't
I
remember
think
the
that's
name of
here,
that.
someplace here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good one too, if you haven't heard that
Yeah.
one, Peter.
Yeah, what's that?
Another one that he has that's good to hear is the best part about it is thankfulness to the Polish workers who were dragged in as slavery, essentially, to build the bombs for the Germans.
Right.
Yeah.
But they would, on occasion, thwart the fuses so that they wouldn't
Mhm.
explode.
Yeah.
And one of his friends was in the foxhole with the shiny end of this protruding out about 3 feet down to the ground where it had landed and made its way through. And there it was, shining and looking at him in the foxhole, but didn't explode. What was the term you said? Thank you to the...
Well, as you said, the Polish workers were Polish people that were captured by the Germans.
Hold that thought. We'll just get onto that story.
Polish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Hour of Heroes with our great Herb Peppard, continuing on his discussion about what he did when he came back home and then looking after his wife and now taking time to travel. He had been to Australia. He took his wife overseas to Europe and showed him where Rome was. But there was another story you wanted to you recalled regarding some Polish individuals you were talking about, Herb. So go right ahead with that story.
Well, just a minute. I have it here. You want me to get it or?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. Well,
Yeah.
okay. We'll just put a pause on for a second. We'll
All
get
right.
it.
Look through that stuff there.
See if I can find it here.
Yeah.
Okay. But while he's looking
Yeah,
for that,
yeah.
Herb, Okay, when I was a member of Parliament, I had the honor of speaking to your daughter,
Oh, yeah.
and your daughter was telling me
Rosalie or
that-
Lark?
Lack.
Yeah.
And she was telling me that you were having the opportunity to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor as part of the Devil's Brigade or the
Yeah.
First Special Forces.
Yeah.
And the question was, how do they get you and the two daughters down there? And I remember talking to the Minister of Veterans Affairs, Aaron O'Toole, at that time.
Yeah.
And then we realized it wasn't just you to go. There were several other Canadians across the country
Yeah.
who were going to go because the Americans were taking care of all of their men to get there with their family and their escorts.
The
And
Canadians
so,
weren't.
yeah, so if you could tell me a bit more about when did you first hear that you were to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor, and then what was that like when you were in Washington?
Well, I don't remember the first time I heard it, but when I did hear it, I couldn't believe it. You know, you see, it wasn't for one person.
Right.
It was for our whole unit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And to go, or I thought, I don't think I can afford to go, and I'd like to have my children with me too. You know, so they must have heard from you, did they? Or
Yeah, they
Yeah.
contacted
Yeah,
myself,
yeah.
and then I contacted the government on your behalf.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, it got paid, but we got our money back. You know,
Yeah.
what we paid, and that surprised me. And they said you can blame Peter. I said that's all right.
No problem there. It was my honor to be able to at least encourage the government
Yeah.
to do the right thing,
Yeah.
and which they did,
Yeah,
and for all the Canadians and their spouses. But here you are in Washington, and
Yeah.
you're meeting up with some of the people
Oh,
you haven't
yeah.
met since the wartime. Right?
that's right. Yeah.
That must have been something. For
It
you.
was. Some of them I thought was gone long ago, but there was one fellow who was over 100, wasn't it?
He was from California.
Yeah.
He was a short fellow, and he was 107 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was very lucid. He remembered it very well.
Oh my
He's quite
God.
honored. But,
Yeah.
but here you are in Washington now.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, it was very surprising, and I was so proud of the fellows. And here they were, young fellows when they were young and we were fighting. They were so active. And here they were, but they were in pretty good shape for. They had to be in their 90s. Yeah. And I was very proud of them anyway.
Well, it was indeed an honor to have been there with you
Yeah.
and your two daughters, along with all the other men. 'Cause,
We sat together, didn't we?
there were an awful lot of senators and congressmen there throughout the United States, and the speeches were fantastic.
Yeah.
And you could see that it was quite an honor for them to have been
Yeah.
able to bestow that upon the men who are still with us.
Yeah.
You know, but there's
they
also
meant it too.
that's right. Now there's also another story that you had written that you would like to tell us about. Now, if you would like to go right ahead,
Yeah.
right ahead.
This is called the miracle.
Yes, sir.
The miracle. I remember the time a miracle happened to me. To me, a miracle is something that brings joy and relief. A miracle is usually a coincidence, something totally unexpected. I remember I was lying in a foxhole. 2 days before, we had broken out of the confines of the Anzio beachhead, and our objective was Rome. We had landed on this beachhead 4 months ago. The aim of our landing was to advance as fast as we could to the Eternal City. Yes, Rome was the first capital city to be liberated by Allied armies. Things didn't go according to plan. We had a name for that. We called it snafu. It translated into a situation normal, all fouled up. As it turned out, we had so many casualties we just couldn't advance. We had to dig in and await for reinforcements. As it turned out, we were pinned down for 4 months. During this time, we held on to the small perimeter of Italian soil. Our activities were confined to night patrols and skirmishes. However, we were often under a great deal of shell fire. Now, as I lie in my foxhole, I can see why our task had been so impossible. As I peered out from under my steel helmet, I could see the giant hills before me. These hills towered over us, and we occupied a little crescent of flat land in the shadow of these hills. The Germans who occupied these hills had a clear panoramic view of us at all times. Their artillery spotters could view every move. Of course, added to this, they were well-trained, determined soldiers. However, in May 1944, we broke out of the confine of our little beachhead and started for Rome. Of course, this was no easy task, and we suffered many casualties. Now, as we crossed an open field, nearly to the base of the foothills, we came under heavy artillery fire. We were ordered to stop, dig in. We waited out the barrage. We recognized the sound of guns as the dreaded German artillery piece called simply the 88. 88 meant the caliber of the gun, which fired a shell with a diameter of 88 millimeters, or about 3.5 inches. This gun was used with devastating effect on aircraft and personnel. There was a strange thing about German artillery. Now and then a shell didn't explode when it landed. We credited this to the fact that Germans were using forced labor in their munition plants. We felt that many of these laborers were captured people from Poland, and in order to disrupt the German war effort, they would sabotage some of these artillery shells so they wouldn't explode. So when a shell landed close and didn't explode, you'd hear a chorus of voices yelling, "Thank God for the Polish workers." Well, the 88s pinned us down, and we dug in each man to his own foxhole. Our foxholes formed a rough defensive position, and we settled down to wait out the barrage. We had endured the shelling for some time when Frank, a friend of mine, crawled over and squeezed into my foxhole with me. "I can't stay in that foxhole any longer, Sergeant." His face was white as a sheet, and his hands were shaking. I wasn't calm myself, but I couldn't believe what Frank was telling me. A man deserting his post was a serious thing indeed. I asked Frank why he couldn't stay in his foxhole, but he wouldn't tell me. He insisted I come and see for myself. So we got down on our stomachs and crawled about 50 yards to his foxhole. He had dug a nice, neat foxhole, about 5 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 4.5 feet deep. I was wishing mine had been as nice. However, my envy turned to concern when, with a trembling finger, Frank pointed out a shiny object protruding through the wall of his foxhole. It was the nose of an 88 millimeter artillery shell. The shell had pierced the ground about 8 feet in front of his foxhole. It had knifed its way through the ground, and the shell had nosed its way out of the foxhole about 3 feet from the top. I could just imagine Frank's reaction when he heard the shell hit the ground, felt the jar in his foxhole, and then saw the snout of the 88 shell in the hole right beside him. And all this terrific impact without exploding. It was a miracle. Well, it hadn't exploded, but would it explode? And if so, when? It was then I was in a hurry to get back away from Frank's foxhole myself. So I told him to join me, and we wormed our way back to my foxhole. We got to the safety of my foxhole, and when we sank down, exhausted, both physically and mentally, then Frank looked at me, I looked at him, and we both said as in one voice, "Thank God for the Polish workers." Some people don't believe in miracles, but I'm sure as hell I'm not one of them.
Mr. Peppard, that is absolutely amazing. That is a truly tremendous story, and just for the audience's information, in the hospital room that we're at Camp Hill, are some friends of Herr Peppard as well. We have Gus Cameron. Yeah. We have Ben Broom, both of the NATO UN Veterans Association.
Very good people.
We also have Vince Bashinsky here. Vic, I should say, sorry, apologize, Vic, who's of Polish descent.
Oh,
And I'm
yeah,
sure he probably
good.
really appreciated hearing that.
Yeah.
As well as the producer of our show, the great Jim Wombolt. And
Oh, good.
so we'll take a pause and we'll be right back with this Hour of Heroes on CIOE 97.5 communityradio.ca with the great Herb Peppard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So we're just going to, the next segment is a wrap up, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to have a couple songs, one Lily Marlene and a couple of others. We'll fill it up. You're doing great.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic, good.
We might
Now-
be able to get you in the movies.
Those stories you read,
Yeah.
those stories you read, are they in your book? The ones you read?
No, not all of them, no.
No?
No.
Okay, so I think
Between them and this, but yeah.
yeah, but those stories aren't in that one.
No.
No. Those are ones you wrote after both the books, right?
Oh, I didn't write this one.
No. You know the Miracle
Yeah.
and the Atheist and the Foxholes.
Oh, that should be in this, yeah.
They're in those books?
Oh, I have no idea whether I put in that or not.
Okay,
No.
we'll double check. They're amazing stories.
Yeah.
And when did you write this book? It was prior to 1994.
Yeah. My wife died in 1992,
Yes?
and it was this was published in 94.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And this is a recollection of your life, obviously, in the service.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. How did you get the title Lighthearted Soldier?
I didn't. They did it where they made the what was the name of the place?
It says
Publish-
Lighthearted
publish.
Soldier.
What was
Nimbus
the-
Publishing.
Nimbus put that on.
They're a little cloudy at Nimbus.
Yeah.
They're not in business anymore.
No. I say Nimbus clouds. I say
Oh,
they're a little cloudy at
yeah.
Nimbus.
Oh, I get you now. I'm kind of slow to that.
No, you're not. You're far from slow, sir. Oh my goodness. Oh no, I said sir, and you're a non-commissioned officer. I'm sorry. I know. No higher insult.
Where's that brown envelope I had?
It's right here, Herb. I was just putting things back away here.
Yeah, this one.
Herb, after the war, did you ever meet any of your so-called opposition, the enemy from, say, Germany or Japan?
I did. Well, I didn't actually. I was in Australia, and I was in a boat, a small boat. And we were going to a certain place in this lake, like. And this fellow was there beside me. I got talking to him, and he was. He said, "My father was." Oh, Herb. He said, "That's a German name." He said, "My father was in the German army." He said, and he was captured, and he was sent to Canada. And what's that beautiful place in the Midwest there in Canada? The lakes and everything. That's where they were. That's where they were imprisoned. That place. I can't imagine.
Was that Cold Lake, Alberta? Was that where they had the camps?
No, I don't believe Cold Lake. I know a lot of the Japanese were interned in the Kootenays and in southern Alberta. I don't think anyone was in northern Alberta. Kitchener, Ontario,
Yeah.
and Ontario were a lot of the Germans were.
Yeah.
They were brought to Canada and they were put in those areas. But,
Yeah.
so-
No, but this was I think it was a summer place, where people, where he was imprisoned.
Right.
Sound to me, it wouldn't be prison, be
Oh, no.
heaven.
North of Ontario, there's a lot of lakes that are across
Yeah.
this country now.
Oh,
That was his wife. That was before his wife.
Would you like to read this?
what is
It's
it?
about your wife.
Oh,
Peggy
yeah.
Scope, okay?
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, Herb, we're going to wrap up,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll read this at the very end.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So basically, this is thanking you very much
Mm-hmm.
for the opportunity to interview you on our
Right,
radio
thank
show.
you.
But first, I'm going to talk about why you wrote the book.
Yeah.
Okay? And if I could ever get my hands on this book, it'd be a great copy to read. But one of the questions I'd like to ask you, you talked about post-traumatic stress disorder, or
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
PTSD. What advice would you give government today to help the young men and women who are serving our country? Okay, so those would be some of the questions I'm going to ask you, all right? So, hi, welcome back to the final segment of our show, Hour of Heroes, with the great Herb Peppard. And I want to say what an extremely great honor it is, sir, to be in your presence, because my parents,
Thank you.
as you know, I was born in Holland, and my
Yes.
parents are liberated by the Canadians, the Americans, the Poles, the Brits, and all of our other allies. And
Yeah.
to meet someone like yourself who was actually there at that time is truly an honor and a great privilege for myself, and I'm sure our listeners to be able to hear history still
Yeah.
being told as you said it. Now, one of the things that you did is you did write a book after your wife had passed away called The Light-Hearted Soldier, which was published by Nimbus Publishing here in Nova Scotia in 1994. And I guess the question I have for you, sir, is why did you feel you needed to write a book about your exploits during the war?
Well, my wife, as you know, had a brother, and he was killed in action.
Yes.
He was in the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion. And so whenever I talked about him, or she talked about him, I thought we should write something, about it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So when I started to write, she was corrected all my spellings. I wasn't doing good at spelling,
Yeah.
so Greta would correct all my spellings. Yeah. And she would encourage me to write too.
Very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you would also, as you had indicated, when your friend Norman in the Foxhole, he talked about, would your exploits over in Italy and other areas, would they be remembered by future generations? And as you rightly pointed out, you go to a Remembrance Day ceremony now in Canada,
Yeah.
and the cenotaphs, not just in Truro, but right across the country, are overwhelmed with young people and with community-minded people coming out to pay our respects. And so what does that make you feel like when you see the outpouring of support?
It pretty near makes me cry. It brings, funny feeling to me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think of all the fellows that have, passed away.
Yes, sir.
Been killed in action. I mean, yeah. And I often wonder now, a fellow, you're thinking of 20 years old, just starting life, isn't it? 20 years old, getting killed. Yeah. And I remember 2 fellows, they got killed the same night, Bridden and McIver. And they used to get out in the daytime and put their hand over each other's shoulder and sing and throw their legs up and dance, And they sang a song. I won't put it all in, but I'll put some. Why don't you do to me like you did to Maria Saturday night? Saturday night. First you caressed her, then you undressed her. Saturday night, Saturday night. Roses were red, ready for plucking. Girls 16 were ready for high school a week ago Saturday night.
Well, here it is first, folks. Herb Peppard singing a great song.
Yeah.
Now, sir, before we close up, the last question I have for you. For the governments of today, you had indicated that you yourself suffered from mental anguish of the war and post-traumatic stress disorder as we know it now. What would you recommend to government? Advice would you give them to keep an eye and look out for the new generation of men and women that serve in our services, and not just in the military, but for all first responders across the country? What advice would you give government?
Well, advice I would give would be for them to take, I'm speaking of military stuff,
Yes, sir.
take everybody that's in the military and come home, examine them, every one of them, not just fellows that were complaining or anything. Maybe they do that now, I don't know.
No, they don't.
No. I think they should, every one of them should be examined.
A full examination.
Oh,
then.
yes.
And what would that help, do you think, in your regard?
Well, that would help. They know what's wrong with the fella, and they know probably what to do then, or the family would know what to do. Yeah.
Very good. Now, before we close out, you have one more thing you'd like to read, and it is very obvious to all of us here that your wife played a very important role in your life.
Yeah.
And so you'd like to read one last poem that you've written, so please go right ahead, sir.
My wife and I one time were down to Peggy's Cove. And as we come out of there, I said to her, I've never heard anything written about Peggy's Cove. I said, I think I'll write a poem. And that's what I wrote, a poem, but they turned it into a song.
Go right ahead.
And it's called Peggy's Cove. We'd stroll together hand in hand and watch the breakers smash the strand and thank God for this wondrous land at Peggy's Cove, at Peggy's Cove. You were so lovely, sweet and fair, and as we breathed the cool, salt air, it seemed so heavenly peaceful there at Peggy's Cove, at Peggy's Cove. But the sound of guns and distant strife, they beckoned me. They changed my life. I left my home, my love, my wife, at Peggy's Cove, at Peggy's Cove. Still all the while I fought the war, my thoughts like gulls would gently soar, and I hear the breakers smash and roar at Peggy's Cove, at Peggy's Cove. I came back home a wiser man. With feverish haste I ran until I clasped my lover's hand at Peggy's Cove, at Peggy's Cove. And now each day my love and I, we watch the seagulls scream and cry, their home and ours as years go by at Peggy's Cove, at Peggy's Cove. God in his mercy, power and grace has this fair land in his embrace, but in his heart is a special place for Peggy's Cove, for Peggy's Cove.
Well, sir, that is incredible, and that is absolutely wonderful. And we know you've dedicated that to your wife, Greta.
Right.
And, well, sir, that comes to the end of our show. I want to thank you very, very much on behalf of all of our listeners,
Yep.
on behalf of our country.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your service.
Thank you, Peter.
And we thank you for sharing your time with us.
Mhm.
We are truly honored to be in your presence. And I wish you all the very, very best in your future. And may God bless you, sir.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very, very much. And we'll be right back with the Hour of Heroes in just a moment. Thank you for listening.
Good.
Herb, I've tried to put your book back together, but you have a whole bunch here up in the window that I'm not sure
I'll
where
do
they
a
came
quick
from.
wrap-up. And
There's
I'll
some
have
of
you
you
can
that
play
didn't know
with
what
it
to
in the
do
studio.
with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know either.
Well, probably take me
I'll
to
figure it out.
the-
Thank
No
you,
problem.
I'll put
Ben.
them in the
Yeah,
back
there
of
is
the
a
book here
part
with
there
the
where I
rest
talk
of
about
the
it's a
list.
two-part show.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that should be
Thank
at
you,
the
Ben.
end of the first show.
yeah,
And then we go bang right into the second.
yeah. And what about, do you mind if we share some of this stuff?
No, oh God, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, I just.
No,
I
no,
like
take
that.
all you want.
I don't like to put anything.
Oh, no,
on.
no. We're gonna
Take all you want.
Hey, Herb, I'm just going to wrap up right now.
Yep.
So everyone has to get. Welcome back to the Hour of Heroes. Your host, Peter Soffer. And I must say, the last 2 days of interviews with Herb Peppard has been really quite amazing, folks. It's a two-part show, as you know, and I wanted to thank Herb very, very much for sharing his time and his exploits with us, and with his friends that were here as well, Ben, Vic, and Jim and Gus. And I'll tell you, it's absolutely fantastic. I wish to thank the great, indispensable, no hair. Even Herb's got more hair than you do, Jim. Jim Wombolt for putting the show together and producing our show.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some great songs to include in this program as well, including Herb's favorite, Lily Marlene.
Yeah.
And so we'll be doing that as well. And ladies and gentlemen, when you see our World War II and our Korean veterans, make sure you stop and give them a big hug, because
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately the passage of time has taken very many of them. And for us
Yeah.
to have Herb with all of us is truly a blessing, not just for myself and his friends, but for all of Canada.
Blessing for
So,
him, too.
Herb, we thank you very, very much for your tremendous service, sir, and to
Yeah, thank
all
you.
of the men and women who serve our country and our first responders. We thank them as well. And always remember, folks, never regret growing older. It's a privilege tonight to so many. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Oh, very good. You've done a great job, all of you. All of you.
There you go, my friend.
Where's our medal?